After so much time, I'm finally working on a new game, and this time, I think I'm going to finish it. Let's go over how I turned a racing game called Colorspace into this new arena roguelite game called Hyperslice. And let's see what lessons I've learned from that. After my game Dashpong, I didn't work on a new game right away. I worked on the juice course and then I was a bit lost. I'm not going to go over everything as it's pretty long, so TLDR, I was lost. The longer I was not making a game, the harder it was getting, and the greater I wanted to jump on a new project. I started Drainscape and stopped it quite fast as it was becoming too big, and then I finally started working on Colorspace. The goal was to make a racing game where you switch color to destroy colored obstacles on the track. Saying this out loud, I now realize even more how it just doesn't work. So what happened, and how did I end up with a concept that just didn't work, and why did it take so long? Originally, I wanted to do something that was quite fast and required the player to be good at the game. At the same time, I wanted the mechanic to set it apart. The goal was to have something unique about the game. I think I saw a concept from Kevin where you control each wheel of a car using a different button, and I thought it was cool. This is when I got the idea to use the 4 buttons of a controller to change something on the ship. When I looked at the controller, it became obvious I should play around with colors. The ship would change color and would use that in the game. Because I wanted the game to require skill, I thought it could be nice to have obstacles on the course and use the color to destroy them. Long story short, the 2 pillars of the game were conflicting. Going fast and having to constantly switch colors to break obstacles just don't work together. At least not in that way. This is especially true because the controls of the ship were already challenging. You had no brake, you could rotate left and right, and you thrusted in the direction of your ship. That alone was enough to make an interesting and challenging racing game. Adding the switching color ability was not making this better, but going against it entirely. Obstacles were constantly slowing you down and were adding a level of complexity which was simply not fun, especially when trying to run at full speed. This made me realize that you can't have too much complexity. You can only challenge the player on so many aspects at once. That's probably why most racing games are not adding something else you can do, or at least they're not making you choose between 4 different things at all time. I slowly stopped working on the game actively, and this gave me some time to reflect. I think I realized that the game was most fun when there was no obstacles, which shows you how bad the mechanic was. The game was pretty advanced and I had many features ready. What was left was doing a lot of level design to create tracks. This is the second lesson I've learned. I don't really enjoy level design. It's a difficult and tedious process, especially if you don't have the right tools. I created a simple tool to lay down the borders of the tracks and the visuals and collisions would be created automatically. But it was not enough. Editing multiple points at once was not possible, and I had to create both sides of the track. On top of that, I had to place down obstacles and think about their colors to make sure it was not too difficult. This was just too hard and not fun. I now realize that level design might not be the only culprit, but the combination of not having the right tools and having a difficult concept to work with that was not necessarily super fun didn't help. I made a mistake before, and I did it again. Colorspace was initially thought as a small game. I would create it in a few months and release it, but it quickly grew into something too big. I think I didn't really know what the core idea of the game was, and so it was easy to get lost into the small details and meaningless features. One last thing is that the people were simply not super interested about the game. The wishlists were not growing, and I didn't really see a lot of excitement from players. Of course, I didn't do everything I could to market the game, like I didn't even make a devlog on here, but still, I got the feeling it was not going to work very well. Can we do something with Colorspace? The Steam page and demo of Colorspace is still up, so you can play if you want. If you have ideas on how to modify the game to make it work, let me know. It could work solely as a racing game or a game about colors, I guess. For now, the game will be on pause, and we never know, I might come back to it later in the future. All of that is cool, but it's the past. And I promised at the beginning of the video a new game, right? Let me present to you Hyperslice. Hyperslice is a totally different game, even though it uses a lot of the visuals I created for Colorspace. It's an action arena game with roguelite elements, where your main weapon is a dash. You can slice dash through enemies which will deal damage, or you can push dash enemies or other objects, allowing you to remove shields, deal damage to other enemies, and a bunch of other cool things. The core idea of the game is to have a small but very tight experience, which is a bit more unique thanks to everything being centered around the dash. In this game, you won't shoot any bullets, but some of the enemies will, and you can use that to your advantage by dashing on them to send them back at full speed. I want a game that flows very well, where you're constantly moving, dashing from enemies to enemies. I'll go into more details about the game design of Hyperslice in future devlogs, but what I can tell you right now is the general structure I'm going for. Oh, and before that, many of the visuals are temporary, and pretty much everything is subject to change, especially the enemies and the environment. It will stay neon futuristic though. If you have suggestions, let me know. The game runs with waves of enemies, with each one becoming harder with more enemies, but also more diverse enemies with different behaviors, chasing you, bouncing around the map, shooting projectiles, and much more. I'm going for a roguelike structure where you start a run, have to fight X amount of waves and bosses to beat the game. During a run, you get access to upgrades every 3 or 4 waves to make your ship faster, better, get more pickups, etc. You also get access to a shop from time to time where you can buy more powerful upgrades and abilities. The idea is to add abilities on top of your dash. Think about doing an explosion on dash, or leaving a damaging trail, or putting explosives on enemies when you push them. Cool things like that. I also want to have bosses that will force you to use your slice and push mechanics in cool ways to defeat them. I'm thinking about 3 or 4 bosses maximum. The arena changes shape every time you go to an upgrade scene, making the combat feel a bit different. Right now the maps are relatively simple shapes, but I might explore more complex shapes, like multiple smaller circles or things like that. I don't want to have too much meta progression, but I recently got the idea of having multiple ships you can unlock between runs, which would change the gameplay a bit and give you access to unique ultimates. Switching ship could give you more dashes but less health, or make you more tanky but slower, allowing you to choose your starting playstyle. The ultimate would be a pretty strong unique ability to each ship that you charge by destroying enemies. Think about a big laser destroying everything, or a strong AoE pushing all enemies outside of the map. Because it's a roguelike, you'll have to do multiple runs before beating the game, and I want to make that more interesting. I have many ideas to have unique challenges or random events to slightly modify the waves that you will encounter. For example, I'd love to give the ability to sometimes challenge the player to have a much more difficult wave to gain a bonus upgrade, or even have a glitched wave where the enemies are modified, or you have to fight only one enemy but much stronger, kinda like a mini-boss. I've also thought about giving players challenges at the beginning of a run, allowing good players to be rewarded and also add replayability. For example, it could be kill X enemies with just explosions, or doing a full run without losing health, etc. There's a bunch of options here. I'd love to know what you think about that, and if you have suggestions or inspirations from other games, let me know. All of that sounds cool, but what is the timeline? When can we expect to see this game out? I pretty much have the full game loop ready. I'm still working on implementing the different upgrades and abilities, which can take a lot of time, of course, depending on their complexity. I have different enemies, but they still need polish and balancing, and I need to have more of them. I also want to rework the visuals to go with a stronger and more bold style, which will still be neon futuristic. I played Ruiner recently, and I just love the overall aesthetic. Not just in-game, but also in the menus, so this gives you an idea of what I'm aiming for. I want to use the Steam Next Fest as a way to push the demo and get more interest around the game, but the June one is too close for me to have the demo ready without rushing it. So I'm aiming for the October one, and hopefully I'll follow it with the full release of the game. I still have to think about it a bit more to see if everything will fit in that time, but that would be the goal for now. Right now, the playtests are somewhat private. If you're interested about the game, join the Discord, and there's a dedicated channel for that where you can try the game and give me feedback. The Steam page is already up though, so please wishlist Hyperslice if you're interested, and make sure to subscribe here for more devlogs on the game. So why do I think this game will be different than my previous attempts? First of all, I spent quite some time prototyping the game without promoting it publicly to really work on the core gameplay, and I think I arrived at something pleasing. I nearly made the mistake of using using colors again, but that's going to be for a future devlog. Also, this time I playtested the game early. I made a playtest on Discord to get early feedback, but I also sent the build specifically to other devs and gamers to get their feedback. I think it's a mistake I made in the past. As devs, we are tempted to always wait for the next features to be ready to make others play, but I think we should do the opposite. Having early feedback is important to test ideas and go in the right direction. Discussing ideas on Twitch and getting feedback from others helped me a ton with this game. And I want to thank all the viewers on Twitch and people that played and gave me feedback. If you're interested about that, I stream 4 times a week on Twitch, game development and other things. We can do the bullet. So join us at twitch.tv/MrElliptic. With this game, I also think I have a much better idea of what the game should be, or at least what I want the player to feel, and I'm trying to stay centered around that idea. Each time I want to add or modify something, I can ask myself, is it making the core experience better or more engaging? And this helps a ton to not get lost in feature creep. I'm incredibly excited about the game, and I can't wait to hear what you think about it. If you have ideas, suggestions, or just comments about Hyperslice, please let me know in the comments below. I will be reading all of your comments. Thank you so much for watching Wishlist Hyperslice, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!